Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This Day in Sports History. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's June 21st, and on this day in 2012, LeBron James finally won the championship he coveted so badly. It was Game 5 of the NBA Finals, with James's Miami Heat taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Heat were up 3-1 in the series, playing on their home court and hoping to close things out. Things were going along just fine until Dwayne Wade got into foul trouble. Heat coach Eric Spoelstra looked down his bench and decided on Mike Miller and told him he just needed him to hold the fort down and give Wade some time on the bench. Miller did a lot more than that. He had a couple of threes, at which point Spoelstra decided to ride the hot hand. Miller ended up hitting 7 of 8 three-pointers on the night to begin the rout. Miami was able to build up a 27-point lead in the third quarter to make this game mostly a snooze fest. But this was finally the coronation that King James long desired when he was in Cleveland. When he decided to take his talents to South Beach in July of 2010, this was the point at which he directed the compass. James finished with a triple-double of 26 points, 11 rebounds, and 13 assists. The Heat closed out the game 121-106 to win the second title in franchise history and the first NBA championship for James. He was also named Finals MVP after averaging 29 points, 10 boards, and 7 assists. That came on the heels of him winning the league MVP for the third time, and the Heat would repeat as champions the following year. Speaking of repeats, in 1988, it was the Los Angeles Lakers becoming the first team in nearly 20 years to win consecutive titles. This was Game 7 of the NBA Finals between the Lakers and the Detroit Pistons. The Lakers were the defending champs, and after winning it all in '87, Pat Riley guaranteed a repeat. It took just about everything the Lakers had to prove their coach right, and nearly everything from Isaiah Thomas to deny them the pleasure. The Pistons had them on the ropes after Game 5, up 3-2. Game 6 was a classic, with Isaiah Thomas putting on a heroic performance with a badly injured ankle, scoring 25 third-quarter points on his way to 43 on that night. But again, the Pistons came up short, and that set up Game 7, with Thomas still hobbling. His minutes were cut drastically in this one. The Lakers turned a 5-point halftime deficit into a 15-point lead, with Thomas sitting on the bench in the third quarter. But the Pistons, even with their leading scorer on the bench, were able to fight back, going on a 17-4 run to make it close again. But this game ended weirdly, and it doesn't seem like anybody really cared outside of Detroit. So, with under 10 seconds left in the game, the Lakers were up 4. Bill Laimbeer hit a long three to cut it to 1. The Lakers inbounded to a streaking AC Green for a layup at the other end to make it a 3-point LA lead with 2 seconds on the clock. But here, the clock stops after a made basket in the last 2 minutes until it's touched by someone. Well, as Laimbeer is looking to throw it in, there are fans, a television camera guy, the Lakers players are all moving onto the court. Laimbeer threw a 3/4 length pass to Thomas with a mob of people encroaching on the court. Thomas was then hacked by Magic Johnson with 1 second left in the game, and yet no foul was called. Order was not restored to allow the Pistons to play out the last 2 seconds. The Pistons' Rick Mahorn said years later that he believed the NBA had it out for the so-called bad boys and favored LA to win because they were a more marketable team. And look, I am not a Pistons fan, but they got robbed. Seriously, go back and watch the final seconds of this game. It is jaw-dropping. And then think about how Detroit won the title the next 2 seasons, and this could have legitimately been a three-peat dynasty. Instead, it was the Lakers winning in consecutive years for the first time since the 1969 Boston Celtics. On this day in 1979, the NBA approved a one-year trial of the three-point shot. You can thank the influence of the ABA for this one, since they were early adopters. The distance was set at 23 feet 9 inches at the top of the key and around the perimeter, and 22 feet in the corners. Boston's Chris Ford is the answer to the trivia question, who made the first three-pointer in NBA history when he knocked down one on October 12th. But teams were not quick to adopt it as part of their offensive strategy. The Clippers' Brian Taylor led the league with 93s that season. For comparison, Steph Curry led the NBA this past year, hitting 357, nearly 4 times as many. But the NBA knew it had a good thing and kept it after the one-year trial. In 1964, it was a perfect day for Philadelphia Phillies pitcher Jim Bunning. Playing the New York Mets on this day, Bunning saw the bare minimum of hitters and retired all 27 of them. He struck out 10 and pitched his perfecto with just 86 pitches. It was just the 8th perfect game in Major League history at that point, and the first in the majors since Don Larsen's perfect game in the 1956 World Series 8 years earlier. It was also the first perfect game in the National League since 1880. This game was played at Shea Stadium, and by the 7th inning, Mets fans were actually cheering on the Phillies' Bunning to keep it going. The Phillies won 6-0, and Bunning also became the first Major League pitcher to throw a no-hitter in both the American and the National League. In 1954, Australian runner John Landy eclipsed Roger Bannister's mile record by more than a second, running his 4 laps in 3 minutes 58 seconds. Now, if you remember back to the May 6th edition of This Dish, you will recall that Landy was one of the 3 contenders to break the 4-minute barrier first. After Landy broke Bannister's record on this day, it set the 2 runners on a collision course for the so-called Miracle Mile at the Empire Games in August of '54 that pitted the 2 men against one another. And in 1994, Steffi Graf came to the All-England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club as the 3-time defending Wimbledon singles champion, and then on this day was beaten in her first-round match by Lori McNeil. It was the first time in the Open era that a defending champ had lost in the first round, and it broke Graf's streak of 31 consecutive appearances in at least the quarterfinals of a major. McNeil proved it was not a fluke, though, advancing all the way to the semifinals before losing to the eventual champion, Conchita Martinez. And time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? Did you know that dolphins can recognize themselves in a mirror? It's true. That's all for today. Thanks for stopping by and giving this episode a listen. This Day in Sports History is a member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more and find more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.